Let's set up a WebDav server using Rclone in Windows. Setting up is simple enough. Use Rclone serve WebDav followed by the remote you want to serve. I'll serve my Backblaze remote, and it doesn't just need to be a pre-configured remote. You can serve any folder or network path like WebDav folder on my C drive or a network share. I'll run this, and by default, Rclone serves WebDav to localhost on port 8080. Serving localhost is rather useless, so let's set Rclone to serve on port 8080 using my machine's IP address to be accessible over the network. You can find your system's IP address by using ipconfig in terminal. Then in Rclone, you can use the address option to change the IP and port the server should run from. If I open the browser and go to the IP address in port 8080, I can see the list of my buckets. The server is running. Let's end this, and I'll show you how to properly configure Windows to access WebDav and File Explorer. In terminal, you want to type Regedit.exe, go to this path, and I'll have a link in the description. You want to change two values. BasicAuthLevel, you want to set this to 2, and then FileSizeLimitInBytes, you want to change this to decimal, and set this to 4 gigabytes in bytes. By default, it's set to 50 megabytes in bytes. This will allow you to work with files larger than 50 megabytes when accessing WebDav in Windows. After you set these values, restart your system. You'll have to do this on every computer that you want to access WebDav for, unless you use a different WebDav client. Once your system has restarted, go ahead and run the WebDav server. I'll go to my laptop and try to access the WebDav from this computer. I'll go to Add Network Location, hit Next, and put in the IP address of the machine. Hit Next, and Open. And I have access to my WebDav on a different machine in my network. This time, I'm going to serve my WebDav folder on my C drive that has a text document and a folder called Videos with a single video in it. Rclone server supports filtering, so all the filters such as exclude, include, and filter are supported. And I'm going to use an exclude filter to filter out the videos folder. So when I connect to WebDav, only this text document will be accessible and not the videos folder. I run this and go back to my laptop, go ahead and refresh and go back to the server. You see I have the text document, but not the videos folder. If you do Rclone serve WebDav help, you can see a list of all the filters supported by serving over WebDav. And this gives you a lot of control over file access. Check out my video on Rclone filtering for more details. You can set a username and password to secure your WebDav connection. Using the user option, set a username, and then pass to set a password. Then, when I try to connect to the server, I'll be prompted to enter my username and password. And I'm connected. And you can also, in fact, use a letter drive and connect that way. To set up multiple users, we'll need to store the usernames and passwords in the file. And to do this, we'll need something like a web server package such as XAMPP that comes with Apache. And inside the Apache folder, you want to go to bin, and we'll open the terminal in here. And what we want to run is the htpasswd executable. So we'll do /htpasswd. And this gives us the options. What we want to do first is create the file, -c, the name of the file, I'll call it htpasswd, and then a username. And we see it created this htpasswd file. Now we can leave it here or we can move it somewhere else. I'll just keep it here for now. But now all we have to do is remove the user and password option and instead use the htpasswd option and point to our file. And now Rclone will look to that file for all the users and passwords. We wanted to add an additional user. We can come back in here and do htpasswd followed by the name of the file and then the user. In this case, I'll call him LAN, add his password, and it's been added. Now, when I go to my other computer, my laptop, and I'll map network letter drive Z, and I'll try to log in with the new user, I am connected. And I've got access to all my files. If you get a Windows error saying that you need to disconnect from an already existing connection, make sure you disconnect from any other WebDav instances and restart the system. Let's look at accessing WebDav over the internet. What I'll do first is change the port from 8080 to 6060. And now we need to open our WebDav port in Windows. To do this, we'll need to open Firewall with Advanced Security. And under Inbound Rules, go ahead and create a new rule. Select port, and then the port we want to use. In this case, 6060. Allow connections. Now just call it WebDav 6060. If you're behind a router, go ahead and open up a port for your WebDav server through it by going to your router settings, setting the port, and set the IP address to the machine's IP address. Again, you can find your machine's IP address by using ipconfig in the terminal. Once that's set, Google your IP address and type it into the browser. And here I'm being asked to put in my password, username and password. I'll do that. And I am connected to my WebDav over the internet. If you would rather access your WebDav from a domain, head over to your domain's dashboard under DNS settings and add an A record. I'll call it WebDav, and you want to set the IP address equal to your static IP address or the IP address that you Googled. And I'll disable proxy since I'm on Cloudflare for this and put in the IP address. Save that. Then you can access your WebDav in the browser by entering the domain. In my case, webdav.jquery.me, and then the port. Again, I'm prompted to enter my password, username and password, and now I'm accessed to the WebDav using my domain. Likewise, you can map a network drive using that domain. And now I've got access to my files. On your phone, you can access your WebDav server using an app like CX File Explorer. Go to Network, New Location, Remote, and WebDav. Put in a host, port, put in a user and password, and hit continue. Now I'm logged in, and I can watch videos and access the little text document that I got. If you have an SSL certificate, you can use that when serving your WebDav server. Simply supply the option cert in the certificate and the key option along with the private key. Then start the server, and now you can access WebDav over SSL. Then you can go back to an app like CX File Explorer. I'll be using DeAndreQuery.com since I have a certificate with that one. And I'll be using the same WebDav. This time I'll be using HTTPS and log in. Again, back into the WebDav server. Finally, I'd like to show you how to set up a service so that your WebDav server will start automatically when you start your computer. I'll just copy the command, and inside my services folder, I'll create a file, a batch file called WebDav. Inside of this batch file, we'll simply copy and paste the command, save it, and I'll be using non-sucky service manager to create the service. I've done a video on that in the past, so if you need to know how to use it, watch that video. I'll use NSSM install WebDav and then point to the batch file. In details, I'll just call it WebDav. And for logon, I'll use my computer's account and then install service. If I go to services, we see WebDav here. I can right click it, start it, and now I have the WebDav server running. And this will start automatically when the computer starts.